Hello, I'm Bill Dunkley. Today is Friday, August 18th, 2023, and this is the Dunkley Report. The head of the Maui Emergency Management Agency has resigned after facing criticism for not activating disaster sirens during last week's deadly wildfires that killed at least 111 people. The County of Maui announced Thursday on Facebook that Mayor Richard Bisson accepted the resignation of Herman Andaya, who cited unspecified health reasons for leaving his post. Bisson said that given the gravity of the crisis we are facing, a replacement will be named as soon as possible. On Wednesday, Andaya defended the decision not to sound sirens as flames raged. Andaya said officials were afraid the sirens would have prompted people to flee toward the mountains, or inland, or into the flames. President Joe Biden has devoted the past several weeks to talking up the positive impacts of his policies, but his efforts have yet to meaningfully register with the public. Only 36% of U.S. adults approve of Biden's handling of the economy, slightly lower than the 42% who approve of his overall performance. That's according to a new poll from the Associated Press NORC Center for Public Affairs Research. Both figures are close to where Biden's approval numbers have stood for about the past year and a half. Signs of an improving economic outlook have done little to sway how people feel about him, as Biden could face his predecessor and 2020 opponent, Republican Donald Trump, in next year's election. A new report says the U.S. military academies must improve their leadership, stop toxic practices such as hazing, and shift behavior training into the classrooms in order to address an alarming spike in sexual assaults and misconduct. The report says the academies must train student leaders better to help their classmates and upend what has been a disconnect between what the cadets and midshipmen are learning in school and the often negative and unpunished behavior they see by those mentors. The review calls for additional senior officers to work with students and provide expanded training. The report was released Thursday. A Mississippi judge has cited police errors in declaring a mistrial for 2 white men accused of chasing and shooting at a black FedEx employee who was making a delivery. Brandon Case and his father, Gregory Case, are charged with attempted first-degree murder, conspiracy, and shooting into the vehicle driven by DeMontario Gibson in January 2022. Judge David Strong said he made the mistrial decision Thursday because of errors by a Brookhaven Police Department detective. The officer failed to provide evidence to prosecutors and defense attorneys. The judge said the officer also improperly testified about some guns that were found in the home of one of the men on trial and about shell casings outside the home. A Taliban official says women lose value if their faces are visible to men in public, and that the only way to wear the hijab, or the Islamic headscarf, is if the face is hidden. Afghanistan's Taliban government that took over the country in 2021 has cited the failure of women to observe the proper way to wear the hijab as a reason for barring them from most public spaces, including parks, jobs, and university. The Taliban's restrictions on girls and women have caused global outrage. But the official from the Ministry of Vice and Virtue said Thursday that Afghans are in favor of the hijab. A Canadian woman has been sentenced to nearly 22 years in prison for mailing a threatening letter containing the poison ricin to then-President Donald Trump at the White House. Pascal Ferrier, 56, had pleaded guilty to violating biological weapons prohibitions in letters sent to Trump and to police officials in Texas. Her defense attorney, Eugene Ohm, said Thursday that Ferrier was a French immigrant who had earned a master's degree in engineering and raised 2 children as a single parent. U.S. District Judge Dabney Friedrich handed down the 262-month sentence outlined in a plea agreement that also requires Ferrier to leave the country after release. The average long-term U.S. mortgage rate jumped this week to its highest level in 20 years. That's grim news for would-be homebuyers already facing high home prices caused a lack of supply. Mortgage buyer Freddie Mac said Thursday that the average rate on the benchmark 30-year home loan jumped to 7.09% from 6.96% last week. That's the highest since April of 2002, when the average rate clocked in at 7.13%. Sharply higher rates are contributing to a dearth of available homes, as homeowners who locked into lower borrowing costs 2 years ago are now reluctant to sell and jump into a higher rate on a new property. After Bradley Cooper's prosthetic nose in the trailer for the upcoming Leonard Bernstein biopic Maestro stoked criticism of anti-Semitism, the conductor's children have come to the defense of the actor. The teaser trailer for Maestro, which Cooper directs and stars in, debuted this week. It offered the first close-up look at Cooper's makeup and performance as the American composer and longtime music director of the New York Philharmonic. Cooper, who isn't Jewish, dons a prosthetic nose as part of his transformation into Bernstein, who was Jewish. Damar Hamlin has little more to prove to Bills coach Sean McDermott in the third-year safety's bid to resume his football career after a near-death experience during a game at Cincinnati in January. McDermott says the third-year player has checked all the boxes in the way he's performed during padded practices, and especially in Buffalo's preseason opening win against Indianapolis last weekend. Hamlin made 3 tackles in his first competitive setting since going into cardiac arrest and needing to be resuscitated on the field on January 2nd. McDermott's assessment comes as Hamlin prepares for a homecoming on Saturday when Buffalo travels to play the Pittsburgh Steelers. An organization in Ukraine is helping former soldiers who lost their vision in combat against Russia to reclaim a sense of autonomy. Along a bustling city street, a 34-year-old man takes his first independent steps since a mine exploded behind him more than a year ago. His goal is completing a 600-meter route with the help of a white mobility cane and a trainer walking ahead of him with a bracelet of small metal bells. Over several weeks, he and other men who lost their vision in combat relearn how to prepare their own meals, to take public transportation, and to use cell phones. The camp also features programs for wives and fiancés. That's been your today. Thanks again for joining us at the Dunkley Report.